Ladies and gentlemen, there is no pain quite like betrayal. It cuts deeper than a wound, and it lingers long after the moment has passed. When someone you trusted, someone you let into your world, turns on you, it doesn't just hurt, it shakes your entire perception of reality. Because trust is not just a word, it's the foundation upon which all human interactions are built. Without it, we descend into paranoia, chaos, and isolation. And when that foundation is broken, it leaves destruction in its wake. But here's what the betrayer doesn't understand. There is no such thing as a free sin. They think they've won. They think they got away with it. But every act of betrayal carries a price. And sooner or later, that price must be paid. Look around. How many people who clawed their way to the top through deception ended up in ruins? How many so-called victors of manipulation now find themselves alone, despised, drowning in the consequences of their own corruption? Because you see, betrayal is a contract with chaos. It promises a temporary reward, but it always demands payment with interest. You may not always witness their downfall. You may not hear their regrets whispered in the dark. But life has a way of settling accounts. The liar, the deceiver, the traitor, they don't sleep well at night. They live looking over their shoulder, waiting for the world to turn on them as they once turned on you. And when that moment comes, it's not you who will have to lift a finger. The very nature of their own corruption will be their undoing. But here's the real question. What do you do with the betrayal? Do you allow it to consume you? Do you let it poison your mind and heart, turning you into the very thing you despise? Or do you take that pain, that lesson, and use it to fortify yourself? Because if you let betrayal destroy you, they win. If you rise above it, if you become wiser, stronger, and more disciplined, then the betrayal was not a curse, but a gift. It forced you to see the world more clearly. It forged you into someone who cannot be easily broken again. So let them suffer their consequences. That is not your burden to carry. Your burden is to build, to grow, to become the kind of person who does not fall prey to the same mistake twice. And when you do that, you win every single time. The weight of betrayal. Betrayal is not just an act, it is a fundamental violation of trust. And trust is what allows us to function in a world that is otherwise unpredictable and chaotic. When someone betrays you, they don't just harm you in the moment. They break something much deeper, something foundational. Betrayal is different from an argument, a mistake, or even a simple wrongdoing. It is a deliberate act of deception or disloyalty, carried out by someone you believed was on your side, and that's why it cuts so deep. Think about how human beings operate. Every relationship, every agreement, and every aspect of our social structure is built on an unspoken assumption that people will act in good faith. When you step into a cab, you trust the driver will take you where you ask to go. When you leave your house, you trust that your neighbors won't break in and steal your belongings. When you confide in a friend, you trust that your words will be kept safe. This is how society functions. Trust is the invisible glue that holds everything together. Now, imagine what happens when that trust is broken. Suddenly, the world is no longer safe. The person you believed in, the person you relied on, has shown you that they are not who they pretended to be. That realization doesn't just hurt, it shakes your ability to trust anything or anyone. You start questioning everything. Was I blind? Was I foolish? Did I misjudge them? Can I ever trust again? And this is why betrayal is such a devastating force. It is not just about the immediate act. It's about the aftershocks that ripple through your mind and your life. It breeds doubt, it plants the seed of cynicism, and if left unchecked, it can make you bitter, resentful, and unwilling to trust again. But here's what many people don't understand. Betrayal is not just painful for the one who is betrayed. It is also deeply damaging to the one who betrays. The person who lies, deceives, or turns their back on someone they once claimed to care for, they have done something far worse than simply hurt another person. They have corrupted themselves. When you betray someone, you violate your own integrity. You reveal yourself as untrustworthy. Once you cross that line, it is incredibly difficult to walk it back. At first, a betrayer may feel like they've won. They may feel powerful, as if they have outsmarted someone or gained some advantage. But what they don't realize is that they have started down a path that will eventually consume them. Because what happens when you prove to the world that you cannot be trusted? People take notice. Your reputation begins to decay. Others begin to distance themselves. And more than that, you begin to distrust yourself. You start to wonder if you are capable of real loyalty, of real connection. And worst of all, you begin to expect others to betray you in return. There is a reason why those who betray others often live in paranoia. They assume that because they were willing to deceive, others must be just as deceitful. They cannot form deep relationships because they themselves have destroyed the very thing that makes relationships meaningful, trust. And so, even if they seem to have won in the short term, they are already on the road to suffering the long-term consequences of their actions. Betrayal does not go unpunished, not because of some mystical force, but because of the way reality works. Those who betray others ultimately betray themselves. The self-destructive nature of deception. Betrayal is not just an act of harm against another person. It is an act of self-sabotage. Those who lie, deceive, and manipulate may believe they are gaining something in the moment, but what they fail to realize is that they are setting themselves up for long-term destruction. Deception is like a poison. The one who administers it always ends up ingesting it themselves. Let's break this down. When someone betrays you, they do so because they think there is something to gain. Maybe it's power, maybe it's money, maybe it's social status, maybe it's just the temporary thrill of getting away with something. Whatever their motivation, they have convinced themselves that the short-term reward is worth the long-term risk. And at first, they may even seem like they've succeeded. The liar fools people for a time. The manipulator gets their way. The backstabber climbs a little higher on the social or corporate ladder. But here's the reality. They are building a house of cards, and it will collapse. Not immediately, not always in the way you expect, but eventually, inevitably, deception leads to self-destruction. Why? Because deception is corrosive. First, it corrupts relationships. The foundation of human connection is trust. Once someone betrays that trust, it is nearly impossible to regain. People may forgive, but they do not forget. And once a person gains a reputation as untrustworthy, their opportunities shrink. Friends start to distance themselves. Colleagues stop relying on them. They are no longer seen as dependable, and in the long run, that is a death sentence for personal and professional success. Second, betrayal breeds paranoia. The person who lies assumes that others lie as well. The one who deceives starts to believe that everyone else is also deceitful. They live in a state of constant suspicion, unable to form genuine bonds because they assume others will treat them the way they have treated others. This is why manipulators often end up alone, even if they don't realize it at first. They may be surrounded by people, but those relationships are shallow, built on fear, obligation, or shared dishonesty, rather than real connection. Third, betrayal destroys character. Every time a person lies, manipulates, or betrays, they chip away at their own integrity. They may not notice it at first, but deep down, they know, and that knowledge begins to eat away at them. There is a price to be paid for violating one's own moral compass, and it comes in the form of anxiety, guilt, and an increasing inability to respect oneself. Even the most ruthless betrayers feel this, though they may hide it behind arrogance, defensiveness, or a desperate need for validation. Look at history, look at literature, look at your own life. How many people have risen through deceit only to fall just as quickly? How many corrupt leaders have met their downfall? How many traitors have found themselves abandoned when their usefulness ran out? There is a pattern, and it repeats itself over and over again. Those who betray others eventually find themselves betrayed by life itself. So what does this mean for you? First, it means you must understand that justice, in some form, is always served. You may not see it immediately, but no one truly gets away with betrayal. The consequences are woven into the very nature of reality. Second, it means you must be cautious not to fall into the same trap. It is easy to justify small betrayals, little lies, minor deceptions, shortcuts that seem harmless. But every act of dishonesty moves you closer to destruction. If you want strength, if you want success, if you want a life that is stable and fulfilling, then integrity is not optional. It is the only path forward. Because deception, no matter how enticing in the moment, is always a slow march towards self-destruction. The unseen justice of reality. There is a fundamental truth about the world that many people fail to grasp. No action goes without consequence. You may not see it immediately, and you may not understand how it happens, but reality has a way of balancing the scales. Those who betray, deceive, and manipulate may seem to get away with it in the short term, but over time, the weight of their actions catches up with them. It is not a matter of if, it is only a matter of when and how. The mistake people often make when they are wronged is believing that justice must be immediate and obvious. They expect to see their betrayer punished in a dramatic, satisfying way, but the world does not work like a movie. There is no grand moment where the villain is unmasked in front of a crowd, no perfectly timed downfall that proves you were right all along. No, the consequences of betrayal are often slow, subtle, and insidious. And that is why they are so devastating. Betrayal has consequences because it breaks something fundamental, the ability to be trusted. A person who lies, deceives, or stabs others in the back is writing their own future, whether they realize it or not. Even if no one exposes them immediately, their actions create ripples. Their reputation erodes. Their relationships weaken. They begin to attract people who are just like them, untrustworthy, deceitful, and willing to turn on them when the time is right. Look at history. Look at the people around you. How often have you seen someone who built their life on deception eventually crumble under the weight of it? How many times has a liar been caught in their own web of lies? How many times has a manipulator been outmaneuvered by someone even more ruthless? It happens again and again, and yet people still believe they can escape the inevitable. There is a psychological burden that comes with betrayal. The betrayer may not admit it, but deep down they know what they have done. They know they have violated something sacred. And that knowledge stays with them. It festers. It manifests as paranoia, self-loathing, or an inability to find real peace. You may never hear them say, "I regret what I did," but if you look closely, you will see the weight they carry. Their relationships become transactional. Their successes feel hollow. They may achieve material wealth or social status, but their mind is never at ease. And then, of course, there is the external downfall. Betrayers have a tendency to overreach. They believe they are invincible, that they are smarter than everyone else. They think they can continue deceiving people forever. But reality is unforgiving. Eventually, they betray the wrong person. They push too far. They make a mistake. And when that moment comes, there is no one left to catch them. Because by the time a betrayer falls, they have already burned all their bridges. So what does this mean for you? It means you do not have to seek revenge. You do not have to waste your energy plotting against those who have wronged you. The world has a way of handling them for you. Your job is not to ensure their downfall, it is to ensure your own rise. You must not let the bitterness of betrayal consume you. You must not let it harden your heart or turn you into the very thing you despise. Instead, you must focus on becoming stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Because in the end, the greatest revenge is not witnessing their suffering. It is knowing that their betrayal did not destroy you. And rest assured, they will suffer the consequences. Whether you see it or not, the unseen justice of reality is always at work. The power of moving forward. Betrayal has a way of paralyzing people. It makes them question everything, their judgment, their worth, even the very structure of reality itself. When someone you trusted turns on you, it's easy to fall into a pit of resentment and bitterness. You feel the urge to make them suffer as you have suffered. You replay the betrayal in your mind over and over again, wondering what you could have done differently. But here's the truth. The longer you stay stuck in that place, the more power you give to the person who betrayed you. Understand this, betrayal is a test. It forces you to decide who you are going to be in response to it. And in that moment, you have two options. You can let the betrayal define you, or you can use it to refine you. If you allow resentment to take root, you become chained to the past. You become bitter, closed off, and distrustful. And that's exactly what your betrayer wants. They want you to remain wounded. They want you to believe that you will never recover. But what if you prove them wrong? What if instead of letting their actions destroy you, you turn them into fuel for your own growth? Because the greatest revenge is not in retaliation, it is in transformation. Think of it this way. When someone betrays you, they reveal a weakness in your system. Maybe you trusted too easily. Maybe you ignored red flags. Maybe you placed your faith in someone who had not truly earned it. This does not mean the betrayal was your fault. It wasn't. But it does mean you now have an opportunity to sharpen your judgment, to become wiser, and to build a future that is stronger than before. The best response to betrayal is not vengeance, it's discipline. It's deciding that you will not allow this experience to define you as a victim. You will not let it make you smaller, weaker, or more afraid. Instead, you will use it as a lesson. You will become more selective about who you trust. You will set stronger boundaries. You will cultivate a mindset that cannot be easily shaken. And here's something else to consider. People who betray others are always looking backward. They live in paranoia, wondering if they will be exposed, if they will be punished, if their schemes will eventually unravel. But you have the choice to look forward. You have the choice to take the pain and turn it into something meaningful. Many of the strongest, most successful people in history have been betrayed. They have been deceived, undermined, and abandoned. But instead of being broken by it, they used it as a catalyst for greatness. They learned, they adapted, and most importantly, they refused to let the betrayal steal their future. So what does this mean for you? It means you must take control of your own story. You must not allow the actions of a disloyal person to dictate the rest of your life. Yes, you were wronged. Yes, it was unfair. But now the choice is yours. Will you dwell in resentment or will you rise above it? You may never get an apology. You may never see justice in the way you imagined it. But none of that matters. What matters is what you do next. Because the true power in life does not belong to those who betray, it belongs to those who refuse to be defeated by betrayal, rebuilding after the storm. Betrayal is devastating. It can feel like the world you once knew has crumbled beneath you. But here's what people don't always tell you. If you handle it correctly, betrayal can be the turning point that makes you stronger than you've ever been. Most people, when they are betrayed, make one of two mistakes. The first is that they become consumed by bitterness. They refuse to trust anyone ever again. They close themselves off from opportunities, relationships, and growth. The second mistake is that they refuse to learn. They pretend everything is fine, push the pain down, and walk straight into the same trap again. Both of these responses are dangerous. The first makes you a prisoner of the past. The second ensures that you will be betrayed again. But there is a third option, the option of transformation. Betrayal forces you to reassess your world. It makes you look at yourself, your decisions, and the people around you with fresh eyes. And if you use this moment wisely, you can emerge from it stronger, sharper, and more resilient than ever before. So how do you rebuild after betrayal? First, you must confront the pain head on. Do not pretend it didn't happen. Do not suppress it. You need to process what happened, not just in terms of what they did, but in terms of what it taught you. Where did you ignore red flags? Where were you too trusting? What weaknesses did this betrayal expose? This is not about blaming yourself. It's about learning, because pain, when understood, becomes wisdom. Second, you must decide who you want to become because of this. Betrayal is a defining moment. It can turn you into someone who is angry, cynical, and distrustful. Or it can turn you into someone who is wise, strong, and discerning. Which path you take is up to you. But if you want to truly rebuild, you must choose growth over resentment. Third, you must refine your judgment. One of the hardest lessons betrayal teaches is that not everyone is worthy of your trust. That doesn't mean you should never trust again. It means you must be more selective. Pay attention to actions, not just words. Watch for patterns. People show you who they are over time. Believe them. If someone has a history of betrayal, do not assume you will be the exception. Fourth, you must build a life so strong that betrayal can no longer shake you. This means developing emotional resilience, setting firm boundaries, and surrounding yourself with people who have proven their loyalty. It also means focusing on your purpose, on building something meaningful that no betrayal can take from you. Because when you are grounded in a purpose larger than any single relationship, betrayal loses its power to break you. And finally, you must let go of the need for revenge. This is not about pretending what happened was okay. It's about refusing to let someone else's actions dictate your future. The greatest revenge is not in seeing them suffer. It is in rising so high that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. Because here's the truth. The betrayer will suffer the consequences of their own actions. Whether you see it or not, they will pay the price. But you have the power to move forward, to grow, and to build something greater than you ever imagined. Betrayal was their choice. Who you become afterward is yours.